My name is Cornelia Rindt, and I work for a company called Climate Solutions, and I am the Director of Domestic Land Use. I help develop carbon projects in Canada and in the US for forestry, grasslands, and wetlands, and we are based in Vancouver, BC. Great Bear Forest Carbon Project is an improved forest management project that changed how forest management practices took place on the landscape. And due to the high levels of harvest reduction and the reduction in timber volume being generated, they needed to develop an alternative revenue source. So the intent of the nations who developed this project and pushed for those changes was to create a conservation economy and sell carbon offsets that come from the protection of the forest, and then enable this, through the sale of those carbon offsets, enable revenue streams to flow back into the community. My role was to take that information, take all the work that had been previously done and put it into the project documentation to present to the third-party auditors for review and independent certification. There are very specific rules and guidelines to follow of how a project is developed. And so our role was to ensure that that documentation accurately and concisely captured everything of what the project had done to date, but also how the project would be managed in the future. We support the nations in speaking to interested purchasers. We support them in providing clarity around the technical aspects about the project, about how it meets additionality, about how frequently does it get audited. But we also help with reviews of contracts to ensure that the sales agreements that they enter into, that they have comfort with them and that they are seeking, of course, the best relationship with that purchaser, so the best sales that they can achieve for them. When you create a carbon offset and you're interested in selling that into the marketplace, there are different ways that you access the marketplace. You either have a compliance purchaser, so where you're entering into, you have generally a large purchaser that is interested in purchasing your offsets. Those are very contractual. But also for when the sales of voluntary markets get a little bit more complicated because there's not like a storefront that you can walk to. We support sales. There's a lot of interested purchasers who come to us and say, we understand that you manage the Great Bear Project. We will either help facilitate those discussions or also direct them to some individuals within the nations to speak further to them about their project. Climate Solutions works very closely with a voluntary carbon community. So there's a large network of entities that know us, that know the work that we do, and are interested in supporting the Great Bear Forest Carbon Project through sales. And so it very much comes down to a buyer-to-buyer relationship. There's not like, we also get approached by brokers. Generally speaking, of course, the more individuals you have between the project and the nations and the end purchaser, the less revenue stream goes to the final community, right? Because brokers and more middlemen, the more revenue stream chips away. So the intent for the best case scenarios is to enable the purchaser to connect directly with the nation and have direct sales agreements. Generally speaking, what we've seen is that your traditional land management practices realize revenue when the resource is extracted out of the environment. Carbon finance can help realize the value of trees standing, of grasslands remaining intact, of wetlands not being degraded and converted into a different type of land use. And so a carbon offset is a tool to change behavior, and it's very broad as a result. There's of course specific criteria that one needs to follow, but it really is to incentivize and encourage a shift away from traditional uses and financially compensating. In the Great Bear Carbon Project, carbon finance has helped the Indigenous people realize some of the deep stewardship values that have existed and still exist and will continue to exist within their communities. That conservation economy that they've been able to establish allows them to reduce harvesting, create conservation areas, create culturally sensitive areas, protect old growth, protect grizzly bear habitat, black bear habitat. The Great Bear Forest Carbon Project focuses on ecosystem-based management. It brings forward many values that are included now in land management. Prior to that, the main focus was extraction of merchantable timber, and that was the primary goal. And so having carbon finance as a financial tool, or having carbon offsets provide as a financial tool, provided more flexibility in bringing more values into how land management practices work, while maintaining revenue stream that supports and improves the lives of the people who live within the area. I would encourage fellows to reach out to people who've worked in this space, to other fellows who have been in this space, to other projects that you are aware of, and ask questions and just think about it as a financial opportunity, and then needing to figure out if the pieces work for your project. I've been extremely fortunate to work on the Great Bear Carbon Project. I have been continuously inspired by the Indigenous people who work tirelessly to improve the on-the-ground management, to improve employment, to improve their communities' well-being. They have been too often left behind in the past, and they are visionaries in land management practices and stewardship, and it has been a real benefit. Very grateful to have been worked with them and learned from them, and I keep learning from them about how we can improve our land management practices, and our role is really to support them because their visions will benefit us all.